There will come a time in your cinematography career, if you decide to own gear, that you will have to go from a little bit of gear to all of the gear. There will be no in between. And that is an extremely tricky time because you can't really piecemeal, at the commercial level at least, you can't really piecemeal a camera package, a lens package together. And I would say that cinematographers should really only be purchasing in the camera department. Right? You don't want to be leaning into the lighting department or the grip department too much. I mean, as you're coming up, you might acquire some lights, but I wouldn't be taking them with me at a certain level on productions because gaffers and grips, they have their own gear, or they're renting gear from somewhere else and they want to make a cut on that. They'll have relationships in place. I wouldn't want to be bringing my own lights to productions. I wouldn't want to be bringing my own grip gear because you're cutting those people's grass and they're not going to be appreciative. They're not going to be happy. There will be, if there's not questions asked the first time, there certainly will be as time goes on, and you'll find those people much less responsive to your emails if you continue to do that because it is a business. They've bought this gear. They have to pay for it. They have people to take care of and families to think about. So just be thinking about the entire crew as you do purchase that gear. Now, in the camera department, I think this is where it is fair game for cinematographers to own all of the gear. There are situations like mine where it makes perfect sense to own everything. I own the entire commercial production package that I use locally. It does me lots of favors. It makes great money. It does lots of fantastic things. That doesn't mean it's for everybody, right? You have to have somewhere to store it. You have to have somewhere for ACs to prep. You have to, because rental houses are not going to allow you to take all of the gear that you own and just come to their place for free to prep. So that's another thing that you have to think about. Or the ACs that you work with on a local level, they have to be able to prep at their house, or you just need to come up with solutions. It's not as easy as just owning all of the gear. And then there's the upkeep and things like that, of course. But I would say my argument side of this is that in my situation, owning all the gear makes perfect sense. When it doesn't make sense is, well, if the gear is readily available, that doesn't make sense. And if productions that you work with are used to operating with a certain rental house. Some people just like, some production companies are just Panavision companies. But there will come a time if you are piecemealing together a package that you'll have to go all in because even local rental companies that are smaller, they don't want to be splitting up their gear. They don't want you to have your own fluid head but need their legs, or you to have all your monitors but need their stands, or you don't have any shot bags but you need theirs. Productions don't want to have to deal with it because they're having multiple invoices going out. It's hard to keep track of if you're the production manager, the line producer. You don't know where all the gear is coming from. It's just something to keep in the back of your mind that it will come to that point, right? Even if it's not there now, even if it seems like really far off, when you're doing that level of commercial production that you have to think about owning an Alexa or owning a Red or owning a $20,000 fluid head, even though it seems far off, just know that it's going to come. That you'll be there at that point. So the decisions that you make now will set you up in whichever direction you're going to go. If you decide, okay, no gear, that's going to come with a certain set of restrictions. It's going to come with less potential income, but it's also much less stressful. There's not as you don't have to do as much thinking outside the box. You can be a little bit freer, but at the sacrifice of income, at the sacrifice of availability, of knowing your gear, of knowing that it works, of knowing that you're across everything. It's really a double-edged sword, but there will be that point where you're really going to have to quadruple down on investment, if not more so. It will get very expensive very fast. But it comes through, one of the great parts about cinematography is you are the person responsible for getting the gear. So if you do, in the next few years, if you do a year where you have 60 days in an area, well, you know that probably if you do one of those years or two of those years, you probably know the next year isn't going to be, you're not all of a sudden going to drop down to 10 days. So now if you work off of half of those days being guaranteed 30 days a year, you start to do the math on 30 days a year, it adds up very, very quickly. Not only that, but it gives you the opportunity to be much more flexible with your billing, right? You can be much more flexible on your invoices on a 3-day job. If you're getting 3 days of gear and 3 days of day rate, if they need something slightly out there or slightly special, you can offer that, right? And it makes you look a little bit more friendly. It doesn't always happen at the highest levels. As you move up, I think this is much less of an issue, much less of a occurrence. But certainly in that mid-range level, which is I'm firmly planted in that area right now, it's common, right? Especially in Australia. A lot of the cinematographers have their own gear packages and have their own rental houses, from which they rent. So just know that if you do go the gear route, there will be this time where you're going to have to either go all in or just go the monitor and filter route.